Hello and welcome to the Dream Team Professor podcast. My name is Scott, and in this episode, we're looking at the top players to target in Game Week 6 Sun Dream Team. Now, we're going to start off with the fixtures, but before we do, just going to let you know that I'm recording this on Thursday morning before Aston Villa play their European fixture. So there are still a few games to play, but we've had the Premier League, we've had the Carabao Cup, and we've had Forest's Europa League game yesterday. So this game week, it's a double game week for all of the European teams. So it's the first time this season that all of the European teams have had their fixture at the same time. So this time around, it's including Palace, who are just getting things started in the Europa Conference League. So this episode, we're pretty much going to just be looking at targeting the European teams. Of course, there are teams outside of Europe that could end up doing well, but primarily, I like to target the double game week players. If there's any people that you're interested in that just have the single, by all means, drop a comment below. But that's going to be the focus of this episode, the European doubles. So the deadline, Saturday, 11 a.m. ahead of the Brentford-Manchester United game. Like I said, all European teams double this game week. And over a sort of 3-game week period, you get 5 fixtures versus 3 over the teams that are just playing in the Premier League. We had the Carabao Cup draw last night. I was humming and ahhing whether to include it in this or not. The next round of the Carabao Cup takes place in game week 9. And it's always useful to have an eye on the sort of further landscape of the fixtures. But the way Dream Team has been this season, the amount of injuries, the amount of chopping and changing you do based on the price increases and decreases, it kind of felt pointless to put a game week 9 block in there. So I'm focusing on 6, 7 and 8 on not only FPL fixture ticker for this one. And we can have a look at the Carabao Cup next week. So I've gone for Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea, Villa, Spurs, Palace and Forest in this one. I do think as a sort of blanket, if you've got Bournemouth players, i.e. Semenyo, if you've got Everton players, an O'Brien, a Dewsbury Hall, Grealish, and Dyer, there's plenty of good ones this season, or even a Bruno Fernandes at United, and you've got other fires in your team, I think they're still fine just to hang on to a little bit longer. Their fixtures are not too bad this game week. So United have got Brentford away. You've got Bournemouth, who have got Leeds away from home, and then Everton play West Ham at home. So it's not the end of the world if you do need to keep any of those players. But we'll look at the European teams. Liverpool, so Crystal Palace away and Galatasaray away. I actually don't think this is one of the better European doubles. Liverpool obviously have been very, very good this season. But I don't think this is one that we particularly would want to target. Crystal Palace, really, really strong side now. And Galatasaray at home, always a pretty hostile away game. City, though, do look like one of the best ones to target this week. So Burnley at home, I think, is going to be a very, very nice fixture. Man City is starting to look a bit better as well. Draw against Arsenal, obviously on the back foot for periods of that game, but they have really started to find their form over the last few weeks. Arsenal have got Newcastle away, which is a away match that we always do tend to struggle in. So that is a really difficult one. But then the longer term fixtures for Arsenal do look good. So it's Olympiacos at home, followed by West Ham at home, Fulham away, Atletico Madrid at home in the Champions League. So I do kind of feel like looking past this Premier League fixture a little bit with an eye on getting on the Olympiacos fixture and then having some Arsenal in play from 7 onwards. I did mention Man City. After that Burnley Monaco double, the fixtures are good for them as well longer term. Brentford away, Everton at home and Villarreal. So obviously City longer term fixtures are looking quite nice. City and Arsenal do look like the way to go in the longer term. Newcastle, again, I said they're always a tough opposition for us when we do play them. They've got Arsenal at home, Union Saint-Gilloise away from home in the Champions League. Then it's Forest, Brighton and Benfica for them. So Newcastle fixtures, again, a bit like Arsenal's, do look a bit better after you get past this game week 6 fixture. Chelsea have a really nice double of Brighton, Benfica. I say really nice. Obviously, both teams are really strong teams, but home double game week always looks like a nice one to target. But we obviously did find out this game week that Cole Palmer has picked up an injury. So that's scuppered plans there. But obviously the likes of João Pedro and Enzo Fernandez, maybe, even though he probably disappointed this week. And some of the defenders still look fine to hold for Game Week 6. But in Game Week 7, it's a Liverpool home single, which isn't ideal. Game Week 8, Forest and Ajax. Aston Villa, Now, obviously, they have still got a game to play this evening, so I'll be careful what I say, but they have been shocking so far. A lot of people did go for Villa players this week because of the double game week, and they look like a sort of nailed team to target the double for this week, in a week that we didn't really know who was going to be starting in sort of the Carabao Cup. So far, they haven't particularly delivered, but they still could do the business tonight. And if they do, the fixtures look okay ahead. Fulham, Feyenoord, Burnley, Spurs. But if they don't, I think it will probably be an avoid. It doesn't matter if you have to end up keeping some of these Villa players, but it's not looking good. Spurs, now their fixtures do look good in the longer term as well. So this week does look like a nice double game week for them. So it's Wolves at home, who've been really, really poor this season, and then Bodo away from home in the Champions League. So I think that looks like a nice double to target. Leeds away after that as well. Leeds have been good, but again, it was a game that you would expect Spurs to win. And then the double game week in GW6 is Villa and Monaco. So Spurs, I think, look like a decent team to target at the moment. Crystal Palace, it's a bit of a mixed week because Liverpool at home is always going to be a really, really tough game for them. Crystal Palace have really impressed me this season. I do think going forward they're going to be a really good team to target, but you'd rather not play Liverpool if you could. After that, Dynamo Kiev away from home in their first Europa Conference League match. I'm not really too sure what to expect. I haven't seen them play in a little while, but I think you would expect Palace to be one of the favourites in this tournament. So every game should be a potential winnable one for them. After that, though, they look like a good team to target as well. So Everton away, Bournemouth at home, and AEK Athens. So I really like the look of Crystal Palace. Maybe you could avoid this week if you did want to dodge the Liverpool fixture and then target the better fixtures later. But I think if you've got Palace players, you keep them unless they're out injured. If you do want a bit of insight on Crystal Palace and Dream Team, we had Jim Daly join us on the Dream Team Tonic podcast last week on Monday. That's out now for everyone to watch. A really insightful episode with a Crystal Palace fan who will be going to a lot of these home and away games in the European stages as well. So do check out that one. And some really useful bits in there. So next, Nottingham Forest, and this looks like a nice double for them. So Sunderland at home and Midtjylland at home. But then it gets a little bit tougher. Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Porto at home in game week 8. I think Forest are going to be really significant, as are Palace, but Forest players are very, very cheap at the moment on Dream Team. So if you are looking to get some enablers in your team that will be playing twice a week and probably are fairly nailed, I think Forest are going to be really interesting for us. Palace are priced a little bit higher, it seems, in general, but I think these two teams are going to have a lot of value in our squads. As mentioned, any questions on the teams not highlighted, drop a comment below. There'll be timestamps below as well if you want to skip between teams. If you don't want to take a look at Forest, for example, you can skip that one out. There'll be timestamps. And I'll have captaincy, boosters, and my team update towards the end. If you find anything useful, drop a like, subscribe if you're not already. But let's get straight into players. So Manchester City, it was the draw against Arsenal. And then last night, delivering in the Carabao Cup, a competition there typically quite good in. 2-0 win against Huddersfield. Erling Haaland is going to be the first question mark of this week. We can never have a simple week, can we? Burnley and Monaco this week looks like an easy captaincy on Erling Haaland at 7.7 million. He's scored 7 goals already in 6 games this season. Was rested for Huddersfield. Probably would have been anyway. But there is a little bit of injury doubt over Haaland at the minute. I'm not overly concerned about it, to be honest. He was subbed late in the Arsenal game. City was playing really defensively. You could argue that Haaland does put a bit of a defensive shift in as well for City, but he did sub off towards the end of the game and was left out of Huddersfield. The comments were that he's got a bit of an issue with his back and needed a bit of a rest. We'll have to wait and see what he says in the press conferences tomorrow, but I can't imagine he's going to give us much more information. I think at the moment, I'm willing to just still give the captaincy to Erling Haaland. But you may want to just make sure that you have set a decent vice captain for this game week. But personally, I do think that Haaland is going to be okay, but not a medical professional here. Foden, 5 million. So I think he's going to be the guy that is of interest this week. So he's been on a run of starting games now. So 4 consecutive starts. He got 68 minutes against Arsenal, which he wasn't particularly good in that game, but it's a really, really tough clash between two of the top teams. So a lot of the attacking flair does get nullified a little bit. But he started the Huddersfield game, which a few people did mention that they thought he could start. He started it in the Carabao Cup last season. I wasn't so sure that he would, to be honest with you, where he's had a bit of a iffy start to the season minutes wise, but he seems to be starting consecutive games now. Good minutes, subbed off in the 77th against Huddersfield, grabbing a goal and assist. And I think that's 2 goals, 2 assists now this season for Phil Foden. So again, he's starting to find a bit of form. 19 points for the game week. Probably going to get a fairly decent price rise as well. And at 5 million, I think a lot of us would have found it difficult to fit him in our squads. But now quite a few people do have a Cole Palmer sized hole in their team, and he could be an option to go for. Having one City in Haaland for the Burnley game is obviously great. But I think the advantage is there if you can get an extra one in to try and target Burnley, maybe Monaco, and hope to get, a 2, 3, 4 goals in the game or across the game week. So I think Foden looking a really nice option if you've got the budget to do so. But then again, Doku is looking really good as well. So he is one of the attacking players that I did think looked really good, even in the Arsenal game. So he's been on a bit of a run himself, looking pretty good out on the wing. Didn't play against Huddersfield, which makes you think that he will be available for the Arsenal match, for the Burnley match. A team that will probably play a low block, and they will need someone with a bit of flair to break it down. So I think Doku could be a good shout for that game. 5 points against Arsenal. Again, always good for bonus points, and can be frustrating when it comes to the sort of goals and assists. He's not the most clinical, but he does have a higher ceiling. So if you can't get to Foden, I think Doku is a perfectly good option as well. And you may even consider that, is Doku a better option because that 1 million allows you to do other stuff to your team when budget is quite tight still early on. Reinders at 4.6. Now, if you don't want to play the sort of pep roulette, which could easily happen with Foden and Doku, that they could easily be players that end up playing one game in the double. We just don't know. But Reinders does seem like he's going to be the player that plays 90, 90, 90, most of the games. 4.6 million. He's on 1 goal, 3 assists now for the season. Got that assist against Arsenal, looking good. But will the late sub on in this game against Huddersfield negatively affect his price? Probably. But 4.6 million, nailed minutes, and it still looks like a fairly good shout in the Man City team. But personally, I'm just looking at Foden and Doku thinking they're a tad more exciting. Defensively, you were really unlucky if you went for Kusanov, because he's started stringing some games together as well. I think, was it the Arsenal game was the 3rd time that Pep had picked the same lineup? I think it was 3 consecutive games. Kusanov got injured, went off at half-time, and was replaced by Matheus Nunes. So 3.5 million, Nunes could be a decent option. I thought he was going to be playing regularly at the start of this season. Kusanov's out for 3 games, so that opens the door for Nunes, but it does also possibly open the door for Rico Lewis, who can also play that position. So I still don't think it's a certainty that Nunes starts. He did start the Huddersfield game, and he came on for Kusanov in the Arsenal game. So you'd think that he's probably the first person you turn to, but you just don't know with Pep. So on to Arsenal. So 1-1 draw against Manchester City, which is a good result, but we've come away from it taking pelters because we probably went a fair bit defensive, a bit like the Liverpool game, probably a little bit frustrating. We're at the point now where Arsenal look like they are a team that do have the sort of tools to be a bit more attacking, and it doesn't seem like we're particularly using them very well. But again, 1-1 draw against Man City without watching the game. Looks good on paper, but yeah, probably could have gone for it a little bit more. Again, it feels like the handbrake could be taken off a bit more, but it's Arteta. He doesn't seem to want to play that way recently. So question marks over this Newcastle away match. A lot of people will be asking me, do you think Eze starts? He's the sort of exciting looking player at the minute, and it's hard to say with any certainty. Saka came on at half-time for Madueke, who is one in, one out at the minute. Madueke's now injured as well. So there are a lot of question marks over the Arsenal team at the minute due to the squad depth, due to the injuries, but also due to how Arteta wants to set up for specific games. And I think this Newcastle one, where it is one that has caused problems over the years, could still be one where Arteta does opt for a more defensive looking lineup. So Newcastle away, Olympiacos at home and West Ham at home look like two really nice games to target, both for clean sheets, both for attacking returns. So I do want Arsenal in my team for those games. And then game week 8, now Fulham away is a tough game, but one that, again, Arsenal will be expected to win. And then Atletico Madrid is going to be a tough game. Simeone versus Arteta. I can't wait to watch that one. But I think long-term fixture one looks good. Bukayo Saka, 6.3. I think we should start with him because he did return. There were rumours going around that it could happen because Max Dowman has been in the squad or on the bench for a lot of this season. He was demoted, I think, down to the under-21s or under-18s, one of the two, which kind of made people think, hang on a minute, something's going on here. Saka was on the bench for Man City, came off at half-time when we found out Madueke was injured, but then surprisingly played 63 minutes against Port Vale. Now, I've seen both sides of this argument online. I was very much of the opinion, why are we playing Saka against Port Vale? I just think last season this happened. Previous, I think Saka ended up playing against Bolton. And then later in the season, you're moaning that Saka's played too many minutes, Saka's getting injured. But then the other side of the argument is he's been out injured, needs minutes in the legs. Now, my argument would be there's plenty of minutes to get in the legs against Newcastle, against Olympiacos, against West Ham, an international break where he's probably going to play 2 lots of 90 minutes. And then you can't blame the England manager for playing him 2 lots of 90 when we're willing to throw him in against Port Vale and all these other teams. So can't have any complaints if that happens. I was surprised by it, but medical professionals, we trust that they will know best here. I don't have the most confidence picking Saka at the moment. He's going to get a price drop because he didn't deliver in those two, the one sub appearance against Man City and the Port Vale match where his expectation would be to get attacking returns when it comes to Dream Team points. So he will be dropping, I imagine, 0.3 down to 6 million, which I don't particularly want to take. And then I'll look at Newcastle away and think, will he be able to play the full 90 against Newcastle? Will he be able to play the full 90 against Olympiacos? Probably not. If he ends up playing a full 90 against Newcastle, then maybe it's a reduced minutes against Olympiacos. I don't love it. And I think there's better options or more safe options that you could opt to go for. So I'll probably leave Saka at the minute. But one way that you could possibly get there is if you wanted to keep Cole Palmer in your team and then sub him out for Bukayo Saka. If you need a quick sort of reminder on how the subs feature works, the Chelsea game takes place at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. Cole Palmer, you won't be able to sub him out during that period, but once the game ends, you will then be able to sub him for someone who hasn't played. So Man City play at 3 p.m, Liverpool play at 3 p.m. You can't obviously sub their players in because they're still playing at the same time that Palmer should have been playing. But you can move him on to someone who plays in a later fixture, like a Spurs Wolves, or the next day, Sunday, Newcastle versus Arsenal. So you will get a peek at the lineups. So if you do see that Saka starts, you could go for him. If you do see that Eze starts, you could go for him, for example. So that could be an option that you get Saka in your team that way. You will end up taking the Cole Palmer drop and then still end up with Cole Palmer the week after. But if you did just transfer out Palmer for Saka, they're probably going to drop the same amount of price. So either way, you're not losing out too much. Eze, 5.1 million. Now, every Arsenal fan wanted him to start Liverpool. It was probably a little bit soon, that one. I can kind of understand why he didn't start that one. He then gets to start against Nottingham Forest, 3-0 win. We looked fantastic. Really good service to Gyökeres, really good threat down the wing. Perfect. We probably think he's then going to go on and start more games. He starts Athletic Bilbao, 71 minutes. He was actually a bit underwhelming in this one. A little bit quiet, but tough away game. He's then benched for the Man City game. Now, Trossard was actually the surprise start on the left. I would have thought that if Eze didn't start, then maybe it's Martinelli, like the Liverpool game, to do the defensive work. But the Trossard selection was a little bit surprising there. But Eze comes on, gets the assist, and again looks like the sort of creative spark this team is dying for at the minute. So you think Eze probably goes on to play the next Prem game? But then he starts and gets his first goal against Port Vale, gets 81 minutes, and now I'm not sure. Now I'm not sure. Could Trossard just be starting on that left wing again for this Newcastle match? You'd imagine. I mean, it's going to be a tough level of opposition, similar to the City game. So could maybe Trossard start it? Martinelli started the Port Vale game, so you'd think Martinelli and Eze, if it was a minutes thing, have a similar amount of chance of starting. I don't know. I really don't know who's going to start, and I really don't know if Eze's definitely going to start this Newcastle game. I have a little bit of doubt with the way that Arteta approaches these bigger games. But I do think he is still worth targeting if it's even going to be a 90 minutes Olympiacos and a sub appearance against Newcastle. I still think that could be worth it just to have him in place for game week 7, West Ham at home, which is a game where I think he will start. And then come game week 8, I think he may have just cemented his place in the team full time. 1 goal, 1 assist so far for Arsenal. The main creative outlet, I think it's only a matter of time. I just don't know exactly when. But you might have a question mark if you do think that Eze's only going to start 1 game and get 1 sub appearance. Then maybe do you prefer going for a Foden who you know is going to get Burnley, or you expect to get Burnley, or a Doku who you expect to get Burnley, and maybe have a bit of a better chance of getting minutes across the two. So it is a decision to make, but I still do think he is a pick, even though I don't think he's nailed for Newcastle. Then Calafiori at 4.4 million. So this was an annoying one. I'd kind of planned some moves in my head, what I might want to make this week already. And Calafiori was one of them. It looked like he was only going to go up 0.1, which I did think was a little bit low after keeping, is it 2 clean sheets or 2 clean sheets or 1 clean sheet? 2 clean sheets. Clean sheet against Forest, clean sheet against Athletic Club Bilbao, and was projected a 1.1 rise. And I thought that does seem low. The other Arsenal defenders were projected more, but I thought that works perfectly for my team. He went up 0.3 in the end, so completely priced us out. But I think, despite saying earlier in the season, I didn't think he was nailed. I think he'll share minutes with Lewis Skelly. It does seem like Calafiori is going to be playing a lot of minutes in the doubles as well, like in game week 4. And he's going to be first choice. There was a few comments, I'm going to sort of paraphrase, but there was a few comments about Skelly. So Skelly was starting against Port Vale, and Arteta was asked about Skelly, and he'd kind of just said that there are players that he thinks are at a different level to Skelly, which you'd have to assume is Calafiori at the moment. So it kind of seemed to be a little bit of a, trying to motivate Skelly a little bit more. And he obviously does think that Calafiori is far beyond Skelly at the moment. So I think Calafiori at 4.4 is a really nice entry into the Arsenal defence. I do feel quite confident they will get 2, but there is always the chance that Skelly gets Olympiacos. But I think over this bulk of the next 5 games, I wouldn't be surprised if Calafiori gets 3 to 4 of those. Gabriel and Timber, 5.2 million. So that's why I'd rather go for Calafiori. But if you can afford any of them, I think they're good for this run. Gyökeres is 5.8 million. He got a 2-pointer, a 1-pointer. I didn't think he was particularly good against Man City, but I'm not really going to criticise him because we're not putting the creative players on the pitch to just really provide for him. So it does feel difficult. I don't think I'll go there this week. 2 points and 1 point means he's probably going to get a 0.3 drop, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on to do well in game week 6. And in game week 7, West Ham at home looks like a prime fixture for him. So I am sort of in my mind keeping an eye on how I could get to Gyökeres in the next couple of weeks, but it probably won't be this week. Maybe a nice 12-man shout, though, if you did want to go there. On to Liverpool. I actually don't have that many targets for Liverpool this game week. So Crystal Palace away and Galatasaray away. Mohamed Salah got an assist in the Everton game and was my captain for this game week. I think anyone that did go against Salah this week is kind of feeling fairly confident or fairly happy with their result. But I just wasn't quite sure. But we'll come into that on my team update. 3 goals, 3 assists from 6 games. That's why it looks great. There have been question marks over the performances. I think the last 2 games he's played, he has looked a lot promising. Obviously, in that Atletico game, looked really, really solid. Not amazing against Everton, but again, he is a threat. So I still think he's someone that you want to keep in your team. But I don't think he's the best captain or one of the best captains for this game week. I don't actually see myself captaining him for at least the next two. So it's Galatasaray and Crystal Palace this week. Chelsea away in a single in 7. I think there will be better options. And in game week 8, Man United home, Eintracht Frankfurt away. I think we have to just judge where their form is at that point. But I don't see myself captaining him probably in at least 2 of those 3 game weeks. Isak, we're going to talk about him. So he started in the cup game against Southampton at home. We kind of did think that was a possibility after being benched in the previous game. He did only play 45 minutes, but he did get his first goal for Liverpool. Came on for 23 minutes against Everton, so just a 1 point. But we think he will start the Crystal Palace, or he will probably start the Crystal Palace game, after Ekatike had a moment of madness where he came on as a sub, scored a goal, and got his second yellow card for taking his shirt off, which means he is suspended for the Crystal Palace game, which means you assume that Isak probably starts the Crystal Palace match, and then maybe Ekatike starts the Galatasaray away match. But could this be significant now in seeing Isak starting the bulk of Premier League matches and then maybe starting to get his claws into a few more of the European matches as well as that? So this could be quite damaging for Ekatike now, possibly, depending on how Slot takes it. He didn't seem particularly happy, but maybe this could be the start of now seeing Isak starting maybe 1 to 2 games in the double game weeks. I'm still happy to wait and see how this plays out, probably over the sort of next 3 game weeks. But by game week 8, I think we will have a better idea of how much Isak is going to be starting and what sort of minutes he's going to get and what sort of structure in that front 3 of Gakpo, Isak / Ekatike, and Salah, obviously. Cole Palmer. Oh, no, sorry, Chelsea. So 5.8 million. Cole Palmer is injured for 3 to 6 weeks, we think, with that recurring groin injury. So substituting him out is an option. As I just mentioned in the previous slide, you could maybe go for an Arsenal player or a Spurs player, because they're the teams that play after. Liverpool and City both play at the same time, so you won't be able to sub. Just a reminder on the sub rule, you won't be able to sub a Palmer out to another Chelsea player. You won't be able to sub Palmer out to a Liverpool or City player, but you could do a player after from the likes of Spurs or Arsenal. I'm choosing those because they have pretty good fixtures. So a bit annoying. The option is either transfer him out now or use a sub on him. I think I'm going to probably just transfer him out at this point. João Pedro, 4.9 million. So 5 points, free bonus in a blank against United. Obviously the red card had a massive impact on that Manchester United game, so it's hard really to take much away from it. But Pedro does seem to put a shift in, get points in a variety of different ways. I'm pretty happy to still have him as my striker. He is currently flagged on Dream Team, but I think they've been a bit eager with flagging players this week. Maresca did leave him out of the cup match or the cup squad, but he just said there was a few players struggling with a few things at the moment, a few knocks and stuff in the squad. So I think it made sense to rest Pedro for this one. And I'm not overly concerned, but we do have our subs for that if it does come to it. I think he's good for this game week. Brighton at home, Benfica at home. You can just imagine Pedro doing quite well against Brighton, can't you? I can see that being a bit of a storyline. So happy to keep him for game week 6. But I do think the possible switch is on in game week 7 when they face Liverpool and Arsenal have a West Ham, for example. That could be a nice switch to a Gyökeres or to an Arsenal midfielder. I think game week 6 might be the last week I have Pedro in my team. Trevor Chalobah, 4 million. He's an absolute goal machine at the minute. So I did actually take him out this week to avoid the 0.3 drop. He did go on to start both games. Now, got the goal against Manchester United. But I don't actually think he was going to start the cup match for Chelsea against Lincoln. I think that one might come a bit of a surprise. I did see, I can't remember if it was an official page or a sort of fan page, but they did say that they expect Achiapong to have a real big part to play this season in the first team. But he was struggling with an illness in the cup match. So I think maybe it was just a chance that they were sort of short on centre-backs and he probably would have played this if he was available. But Chalobah is turning out to have been a really, really strong pick this season. I don't think I'll be going back there at this point, but he's probably going to make back the price drop that he had the week before. So if you do have him, he's fine to keep. And I think these two fixtures still look good. Enzo Fernandez, 4.8 million. So he was one of the surprise players that did start 2 games this week as well. Now, I didn't actually want to approach this Carabao Cup by trying to target people that would play twice, because I think a lot of the time it is a surprise who does go on to play twice. But there were actually quite a few. Enzo, one of them, but he did just get two pointers, which will frustrate a lot of people that went for him. I still think it's a strong hold. Like for game week 6, if you take the price changes out of the equation, I think Enzo starts 2. I think he starts Brighton and Benfica. There's the chance that he's on penalties. If he is starting, he took that one against Fulham when Palm wasn't on the pitch. Maybe you could argue that Pedro has a chance of taking the pens as well, but Enzo scored the last one. He's on corners as well. I still think he's a really, really strong pick. Just he didn't score or do anything crazy this week, but we know that price increases and decreases do have a strong influence this early in the season. So I imagine a lot of people will be taking Enzo out, but if you have got other fires to sort out, I would probably still just take the drop personally and keep him in my team. In terms of other attacking assets, people that could come in and sort of take Palmer's place, I just think for the sake of just this double and then having Liverpool the week after, I'd probably just take my attention to the likes of Arsenal and Manchester City and try and get the attackers there. Newcastle, so they're having a quietly good season, I think, Newcastle. So this week, obviously 4-1 against Bradford yesterday and a fairly strong lineup in that. And then the 0-0 draw against Bournemouth, which is actually a really good result, I think, away from home after you've just played Barcelona as well. So Newcastle quietly looking good. And I think once this Arsenal fixture's out of the way, the fixture ticker is looking pretty good for Newcastle as well. So definitely people that we will be considering. But there is a lot more rotation at the moment at Newcastle than there sort of has been in previous seasons. A, because the squad is looking a bit bigger. But I think also B is because Eddie Howe's kind of learnt from the last time they were in Europe. They really did struggle for injuries and rotation, squad depth. So I think this season there may be a bit more rotation there. Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, Trippier, all left on the bench for the last game after playing Barca before it. But a lot of these players did return for the Carabao Cup. So yeah, I think it will be a little bit tougher. Lewis Hall at 3.9. He's been someone I've been trying to keep an eye on to see when he might be breaking back into the team. And this week was it. He started 2, got 9 points and 12 points, a tackle point in each, bonus point in each as well. So I do think he's going to be interesting, especially as where they've been keeping a lot of clean sheets. A lot of the Newcastle defenders' prices have gradually increased. Well, Lewis Hall's been getting the sub appearances and did not plays. His price has stayed pretty low. And I think 3.9, if he is going to starting regularly, I think is a really nice price. But there is obviously a chance that he could rotate still with Trippier coming in and out on the side and Livramento swapping fullback positions. Livramento 4.4 still looks a solid hold if you've got him. And even someone to consider maybe after game week 6 potentially. They're a good defence. But he's the same price as Calafiori. Now, I think he's probably more nailed than Calafiori, but maybe it's my bias, but I think I personally would prefer to have Calafiori in my team. You've got Thior, I don't know how you pronounce it, the new signing, the new centre-back for Newcastle, 3.2. He's had back-to-back starts this week, impressed. Maybe could have got sent off in the Bournemouth game, but stayed on the pitch and he's had a solid week. He's also 3.2 million, so I think you could do a lot worse for that real enabler price. Someone to keep an eye on if you can get there while he's still cheap. Anthony Gordon, 4.4. So I saw a few people did actually go there. Someone that I wasn't ever going to go for myself, but I did say on the last episode that he could sort of be an option, or it might have been on a Tonic podcast. He was an option if you did want to try and get him in for the first game. He would have been suspended and then eligible to play Bradford, which he's gone and got a 15-pointer in max bonus. Was it 3 shots on target, an assist? And so really strong performance from Anthony Gordon, and he will be back now for the Arsenal game and can play as normal after that. Now his suspension is up, so Gordon will definitely be one to watch. Spurs, so they've got Wolves and Bodo this week, followed by Leeds in game week 7. I think this looks really nice. I think Kudus is still the main target for me. 4.7. I've been really happy since having him in my squad. 10 points this week, so 2 assists in the Premier League match. Got a rest in the cup, but he's played really strong minutes so far this season. I think he's a really good option. So he's 5th for total bonus already. expect that he's probably going to be right up there this season. He's always been consistently good for bonus. And now he's on 4 assists as well, taking his really good set pieces. Xavi Simons, 4.5 million, was benched in the league, which was a bit of a surprise. Maybe building his minutes up a little bit, or maybe it was a tactical thing. But when he did come on, he played in a more of a central position compared to when he played out on the wing in the previous games. I think he looked really good from that spot. And he started yesterday, came in with 6 points, 3 bonus in that one. He's had bonus in every one of his matches. And I think he could end up being a very similar sort of player to Kudus when it comes to getting those bonus points and scoring really well on the Dream Team points. Even looks like he might have a bit more attacking threat than Kudus. So Simons is definitely going to be one to watch. And I don't think I'll rule out potentially owning both at some point. Pedro Porro was one of the guys that did pleasantly surprise owners in this Doncaster match. So he got a surprise start at right back. Didn't get any bonus points. Again, only 1 bonus point for the season, but did get a 8-pointer here for the clean sheet. So yeah, two almost full 90s this game week. So looks a really solid option still. I don't see any particular reason why you would sell him, but with Ven and Romero still looking really, really good for the price, I do think there is an opportunity to downgrade and then use the rest of the money elsewhere. I think if Porro isn't getting the attacking returns that he was getting, which he will go on to get some at some point, but no set pieces now, no bonus points, I think maybe you could use the money a bit better. Saar was missing from both games. 2 did not plays. I think it's a likely sell. It was apparently just precautionary, Thomas Frank said, due to an injury, but again, there's plenty of options. Just move it. Johnson owners were rewarded if they did hold on to him. It did look like he was going to play Doncaster, and he did deliver late on in the game. But again, I think probably sell him now because there is going to be disappointment down the road. Bergvall at 3.3. Again, if you're looking for a really cheap option, I don't particularly love it. I still think they've got a lot of options in that midfield, but he does keep getting attacking returns. This time, it was an assist off the bench for that Johnson goal. But again, 1 goal, 3 assists for the season at his price is pretty good. On to Palace. And as I mentioned, do check out the Dream Team Tonic podcast after this. We had Jim Daly, who's a comedian and also a passionate Crystal Palace fan, who's joining us on the podcast to talk about what their best options will be and what their lineups could look like for the European fixtures. Really helpful one. Their fixtures this week, a bit mixed. So Liverpool and Dynamo this week, but after that, Everton, Bournemouth, AK Athens. I think Palace are going to be exciting for the European fixtures, and a few injury boosts for them. So Wharton's back, which obviously is going to help the team massively, both in defence and going forward. Saar is apparently training ahead of Liverpool, and Pino as well, if anyone punted on him, should be available for the Liverpool fixture. So starting to look like Palace probably are going to be better options again. This week, I don't think it's a necessity with Liverpool, but I think longer term, still really, really good picks. So Wharton, Mateta, Gahey, Kamada. If you really want any of these this week, then you could get them ahead of their price increases. But otherwise, I think you can wait another week. And I think longer term, there's some other options as well that will look good. I think Henderson, 3.7, is probably going to drop to about 3.5. And so it's time to weigh up whether you think you'd rather just pay that little bit extra and get Henderson over Sells. Jim reckons that Henderson will play both in Europe. I'm still happy with Lacroix at 4 million. So didn't have the best result, just the 3 points in the game against West Ham, but he hit the crossbar with a header. He was 1 ppm off getting bonus points. So I think another day it could have been a really nice haul for him. Gahey got the assist for a goal. Again, was it headed off the crossbar then put in against Mateta? But yeah, all of the defenders looking solid. Richards, again, looking solid as well. 4 tackles, so gets an extra 2 points for that. I think any of those centre-backs look good. Munoz, quiet week for him, but you know he's probably one of the best Palace options. It's just whether you want to pay the price for him at this point. I think this isn't the week to pay it, but after 7 and 8, maybe. And then Aston Villa. So I mentioned we obviously have to wait and see how they get on this evening. That will affect the price changes and probably our thoughts on these players. If Watkins and Rodgers have a good game tonight, maybe all will be forgotten, but they did blank again. They have looked really, really poor. So just the 2 points for Watkins, just the 3 points for Rodgers. Just looking a shadow of their former selves. But again, if they do it tonight, they will redeem themselves and maybe could be on the table for future weeks. There are nice fixtures: Fulham, Feyenoord, Burnley, Spurs. I don't see myself going there now. I just think the City fixtures look good, the Arsenal fixtures look good, Spurs fixtures look good. So there are options for the higher price point players. But I do think the likes of Matty Cash 3.6 and Consa 3.8 could still be solid picks at the back. Elliott didn't get a start, which would disappoint a few people. You'd imagine he starts this evening. 58 minutes sub in the last game. Matty Cash, if you went there, did grab a goal. Mentioned that he's got the corners. He has got a bit more attacking threat than Konsa, but yeah, wasn't expecting that kind of goal from him. Really good strike from distance. But let's just see if he starts in the double game week. I think he probably will. Konsa, I think, is nailed for the double, so longer term's a fine pick. No bonus in this game, just the 2 points, but upcoming fixtures I think are fine. But I probably would still just pass on the other options. It's Cash, Konsa. Let us see how the attackers do. Then Forest. So this week it was interesting one to have a look and see what sort of lineup that Ange puts out in a double game week. Try and work out what his best 11 will look like. So I've got both of the lineups from not only FPL on the screen. This week they've got Sunderland and Midtjylland, which does look like a nice double to target. Did concede in both games, so maybe that's the Ange effect. They're not looking as solid at the back, but they did seem to play a sort of consistent defence. So Sells plays both in goal, and at 2.9, it's a fine budget keeper, isn't it? He's not going to go up in price this week, you wouldn't imagine. So he is still there if you don't want to do it this week and you want to do it the week after or the week after that. But this does look like a good week to do it. Double game week keeper. And like I said, quite a way off of Henderson still in terms of price. Anderson, who I went for this week, was doing exactly what I expected really from him. 3.9 million, but 3 bonus points in both games. Does really well for the sort of passing aspect of PPM, does really well for dribbles, crossing, slightly less good for crossing, losing corners to Douglas Luiz, who typically I think got 2 assists. I think it might have both been from corners as well, which was a little bit annoying, but I think Douglas Luiz may have gone off with an injury in that second game, so I think Anderson may be stepping up again to take those. Williams and Zinchenko. Now, I think these are going to be the 2 enablers. I know Ange defending doesn't really work out too well, but 3 million and 2.7. You have to kind of think about, are these players going to give you good value for that price? And I still think they will, even if they're not keeping sort of consecutive clean sheets. Williams this week did grab a goal, 14 points, and then 3 points in the Europa game. Zinchenko, just the 4 and the 3, but will you take a 7-pointer, for example, from a 2.7 mil player? Yeah, I think that's really good. Even if it's just slowly adding up week on week, I think for 2.7 million, I think that's decent. Jesus, Igor Jesus, the new signing, playing up front in the Europa League match, gets a brace. That's his second brace now after getting one against Swansea. Will he break into the first team and start stealing Chris Wood's place? I think there is a possibility that that could happen if Ange wants to change his style of play. So one to watch at 2.9, but I wouldn't do it yet. Captaincy and boosters. I mentioned I think the captaincy is pretty straightforward this week. I do think that Haaland is the sort of no-brainer captain. But the problem is this little flag above him. So set a good vice captain. Wait and see what they say in the press conferences. Keep an eye and try and see if you can get any team leaks or anything off of Twitter. But I think my armband probably still is going to be on Haaland at the moment. But yeah, just make sure you give yourself a good vice just in case. I think Arsenal and Liverpool, while they have good options, I think their opposition in the Prem is making it a bit difficult. I think Crystal Palace away for Liverpool is still a tough defence to get past, and exactly the same for Newcastle against Arsenal. But I think Arsenal probably got the slightly better Champions League fixture. I think if you really wanted a differential, maybe a João Pedro in that home double against Brighton and Benfica, or maybe a Kudus who's just been rested playing against the Wolves, or a Bodo, but I don't really see any reason to go against Haaland unless you think he's genuinely out. 12th man, probably would have been Haaland this week, but maybe don't risk it if you do think there's a chance he's out. Maybe a Phil Foden this week if you haven't got the money to get there. I think Arsenal will have better double game weeks if you're looking at Eze or Gyökeres, and Again, we might be a bit more clued in on the starting lineup by that point. I think max captain, goal bonus, there's probably better weeks for it later down the line with double Prem fixtures and maybe some of the cup matches. If I was making a sub this week, it'd probably be Palmer to an Eze, Palmer to a Saka, or Palmer to a Kudus. On to my team update then for game week 6. Now, there is still a Aston Villa match to go where I do have Konsa. I'm seeing a lot of Watkins and Rogers and Elliott, so I do think I'm probably going to go down in rank this week. But personally, after this Aston Villa match, maybe Konsa keeps clean sheet, gets a goal, and I'm good. But I think he's quite highly owned. I think there's a lot of Matty Cashes out there as well. So I'm currently 6.2k. I think I dropped from 2.9 to 6.2 this week, which is a fairly big drop, but it's congested at the moment. And I kind of did think this would happen. I never really go all in on the Carabao Cup fixtures because I want to build for Europe. I think my team is looking pretty good for the upcoming European fixtures. So 65 points as it stands with Consa still to play. Rofs, 2 points. Now, he was someone that I was looking to possibly move to Sells this week. But with the Palmer injury, I think that goalkeeper move might be kicked along a little bit and happen a little bit later. Lacroix, 3 points. Again, disappointing that he hit the crossbar, but I think he's a good long-term hold. Konsa, still to play. But I think, again, with Europe coming up, he's going to be nailed in that Aston Villa side. So I think my 2 centre-backs there are fine. O'Brien, surprisingly, did play both the fixtures this week. Come away with a total of 5 points for the game week. So decent enough week for him, but I think he is going to be one of the guys that I move on this week. The plan was always to move on Rofs and O'Brien, and then I could have had a full 11 of European players, but like I said, the Palmer injury is probably going to mean that I have to keep one of the 2. Romero 4, that was a tough game for Spurs against Brighton this week, and I didn't really expect he was going to play the Carabao Cup, so I'll take 4. He's been impressive so far this season. Kudus 10 with the 2 assists. Cole Palmer with the injury, which I mentioned, I think he's going to be a transfer out rather than a sub for me. Anderson, 11 points. Now, really impressive that. He actually done pretty much exactly what I thought he was going to do. So my captain, I'll put the vice captain on him this week. My captaincy really was decided between Anderson and Mohamed Salah, who come away with 6 points, doubled to 12. My theory or my thinking behind Anderson was he sort of has an average of around 4 to 5 points a week. Obviously, if I got lucky, he could have got an attack in return, but I thought the sort of floor was around 10 points, 8 to 10 points for Anderson. And in my head, I kind of thought, if I am going to get 8 to 10 points from Anderson, double it to 20, that's one Salah goal, basically. Like, could Salah get a goal against Everton and everyone cap him? Is it really worth the sort of ceiling of Anderson to go against Salah, even if it is just a single? And I kind of thought with the full, ownership of Saka, I didn't think it was too outlandish that he could have ended up getting an attack in return or 2 attacking returns. And I'd be looking at my team thinking, why am I captaining Anderson over pen taking Mohamed Salah with however many goals every season? So would have been better off capping Anderson, but I don't feel too bad about it. Maybe I will if Watkins smashes it this evening, but I was never going to pick Ollie Watkins for this week. Erling Haaland with 10 points, scoring against Arsenal, like 6 goals in 5. Incredible. And I think he will be my captain this week if he is fit. And then João Pedro, 5 points in a game where they struggled against Manchester United with the 10 men. But again, to come away with 5 points in that game is pretty cool. So Palmer, Haaland, Pedro, all flagged. I think Pedro's going to be fine. I think Haaland's going to be fine. So I think I'm just staring at the Palmer problem, hopefully. But again, we wait and see what happens in the press conferences. So team value built a fair amount this week, actually. I'm on 52.4 plus 0.8 in the bank. So 53.2 in total team value. So I think that's looking okay. Recovered after a slow start. Rofs and O'Brien were my initial thoughts to transfer out. But like I said, I'm probably going to just keep Rofs in goal now and take out O'Brien. I think the goalkeeper position is less of a priority. And I think I probably will just take a transfer and use it on getting Palmer out of my team this week. So O'Brien and Palmer are probably the 2 that I take out. With Sells not doing amazing, I think his price isn't going to get away or anything. So that switch can happen either next week which is a single, so it's not really even necessary that week, but it could happen the week after. So 10.1 million to replace O'Brien and Palmer, it looks like. And I think Arsenal attack, Arsenal defence, and City attack are the sort of two ways that I want to go. So here's my thinking at the minute. So I take out Cole Palmer, take out O'Brien. That's 10.1 to play with at the minute. Just noticed I jumped to 5.9k actually since doing this episode. It looks like Anderson's gained an extra point overnight. So we will take that 12 points now for the game week. Get in. Right. So yeah, Palmer, Roth's out this week. And yeah, looking at Arsenal, looking at City, I actually have a fair amount of money to do so. So I like the look of Calafiori. I don't think anything's gonna benefit price changes from this, but I think Arsenal defence do look solid going forward. So I would like to get Calafiori in as one of the cheaper ones. I do like the look of that, and that gives me 5.7, which is quite nice. A real flexible price for options. So I can go for a Phil Foden, who's 5 million, keeps 0.7 in the bank there. Also Doku, if I wanted to keep a little bit more money behind. I think Doku's still really nice option. And 1.7 in the bank for moves the week after. So I could easily get a João Pedro up to a Gyökeres, like I mentioned, and that would still give me the money in the bank to go Roths. And I think I could do a similar thing if I even went for a Calafiori and Eze this week. 0.6 in the bank if you think Gyökeres is probably going to drop 0.3. Pedro probably stays the same, so I can dodge the Pedro move against Liverpool and maybe go for a Gyökeres or maybe even move into another midfielder potentially. But I still don't know for certain whether Eze will start the Newcastle game. And in Eze against Newcastle, if you could get a Doku against Burnley, I think that probably would look a little bit better. Still gives me the money in the bank as well. One thing I have looked at though, and it does look good. Let me know what you think about this, but dodging the Arsenal defence, and then I've got the exact funds to do a Foden and Eze midfield, which I do think looks good. Look at that front six. Kudus, Foden, Anderson, Eze, Pedro, Haaland, Salah. That looks really nice, but it does use the exact funds. And then doesn't leave me any sort of wiggle room to upgrade a Roths later. Or if the following week I wanted to take João Pedro out and try and get to a Gyökeres or someone else, I am going to have to take another player out to sort of build that extra bit of funds to do the leeway. But that does look nice, doesn't it? That midfield of Kudus, Foden, Anderson, Eze. But yeah, I think that my final decision will be whether to go all out on that sort of midfield of Arsenal and City, go all out attack, maybe tone it down a little bit and go for Calafiori and Foden. Or maybe if I did want to still go for the midfield of City and Arsenal, I could go Eze, I could go Doku instead of Foden, and then I still have the 1 million in the bank to be able to upgrade João Pedro to someone next week or make that goalkeeper change. So that's how I'm thinking at the minute. It's just whether I go for the exciting Foden Eze combo, but it damages me a little bit in the longer term, but maybe gets me more points in the shorter term, or maybe I leave a little bit of money behind. So that's my thoughts at the minute. Again, still only Thursday morning, so press conferences probably are going to be a big part of this. But I think something like this, and then, like I said, my captaincy is going to be on Erling Haaland. If I went for Foden in the team, then maybe he gets the vice, hoping for that Burnley game. But I still think both Kudus and João Pedro even, or Salah, perfectly good vice captains. That is everything. Thanks for watching. If you did enjoy it, please do leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I'm about 50 away from 5k, so help us on the way to 5k. And if you do want to check out that Dream Team Tonic episode, there'll be a link in the description below. Really handy if you are looking at your Crystal Palace assets going forward. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.